Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Peeled Back Live Conversation with series. As always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier from Peeled Back, the enjoyment coach. Today, I'm super honored to have Alexander VandeLaar on the show today. He's going to talk to us all about being a black sheep, masterminds, and his journey. Alexander, thank you so much and welcome.
Gene, honored to be here. Really excited to connect and to chat further. We had that brief interaction over coffee and saw so many similarities in our values. And I'm grateful to be connected to you. And shout out to Justina who connected us, of course.
Big shout out. She's an Uber connector, that young lady. So when she said, have you not, well, she asked me if we'd met before. I'm like, no. She's like, how's that even possible? You two have so much in common. And then I jokingly let her know that Facebook has been trying to match us up for quite some time. For the longest time on Facebook, you've been like we're at the top of my suggested friends list. I'm like, I haven't met him, and I feel kind of weird, just like, hey, Facebook thinks we should be friends. Should we do this or not? And you know what? I think that was it knew us pretty well to make that suggestion so highly ranked.
Yeah, I guess social media isn't all bad,
No, definitely not.
A recent documentary kind of put an interesting spin on it, but I'm super grateful for the connections that it cultivates.
Oh yeah, it definitely is interesting on how you put things out there and the way that it tries to connect people. Like between that and LinkedIn, it is interesting some of the matches that it aligns with. We're like, wow, how much do you actually know about me based on what I like and comment on? They're like, it's crazy how much information they know us probably better than we know ourselves sometimes.
Some would say.
So I like to for all the guests, I like to throw it out a little bit, like to introduce yourself and to tell the world about your kind of journey, where you're at, and we'll pick it apart from there.
Yeah, perfect. I would love to. So born and raised in Ontario, in the Niagara region, for anyone that's familiar with that. So kind of grew up in wine country. My grandparents had a big fruit farm out there, so I spent a lot of time outdoors. And growing up, I just played a lot of sports, and I didn't think about my future or my career a lot. There's a lot of people that growing up like, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I was just like, I just want to be outside. I don't know. But one thing that was kind of this undercurrent was, I would like to help people in some capacity. And so my brain and maybe some family suggestions went to, hey, why don't you be a firefighter? Why don't you be a police officer? They help people, and they make pretty good money, and they get lots of time off. They have good benefits. So you're starting to get a glimpse into some of the conditioning maybe that I was surrounded by with. A lot of people in my family, amazing people, and they chose typically the employment route, right? Get a safe job. And I think a lot of people, a generation or two ago, that was pretty normal. And so what I discovered is I had this red-green color deficiency with my vision. So not quite red-green colorblind, but pretty close. And to go through some of these procedures or testing to become a firefighter or a police officer, you need to have full vision in regards to the color spectrum. So I was like, okay, I guess I can't do that. And one of my really good friends was saying, you love talking to people and connecting. Why don't you go into business? It's pretty versatile. So luckily I took his suggestion and went and studied business for 4 years at Brock University, concentrated in marketing and entrepreneurship. And right out of that, I got a pretty awesome job, all things considering. I had a salary, a company car, a phone, and after a month or two, I was promoted. So I was in sales and became sales manager, and it was a fantastic experience. I learned so much. Got to work right alongside the owner of the company, the president, and we traveled around North America. And I got to see one way that business could happen. It was manufacturing, so it was a little old school. We were still faxing our orders and things like that. And eventually, I said, hey, I studied marketing in school. We don't do any marketing. So he said, perfect, make a marketing department. And then, customer service was, looking for a little guidance or leadership. So they came underneath me. And at a pretty young age, I had this lofty position. All my friends and family are congratulating me, like, you made it, you hit it big. There was a clear path. The owner wanted to retire in 4 or 5 years, and he said, so yeah, you can just follow this path and then be running the company when I want to step away.
Yeah.
The problem was that I would come home each day, or I'd be, away on a business trip and, go back to the hotel room, and I'd have, 4 or 5 beers in me, probably some unhealthy food, and just be not super stoked on life. Right. So I could definitely analyze myself at that time and, say I was probably, abusing alcohol, like having a little bit too much at sales meetings. And I just wasn't really happy with who I was and the direction I was going. And I was procrastinating at work one day, as you do when you're not fulfilled. And I came across a Tim Ferriss article, and he was talking about, scheduling these mini retirements into your life, not waiting until you're 50 or 60 years old to start enjoying life and being who you really are. And so that kind of planted a seed in my head. And a couple of weeks later, I, put in my resignation. Friends and family members were kind of shocked, like, oh, what are you doing? You're throwing away this opportunity. And I went back to that route of wanting to help people. I thought, for the 2 or 3 year period when I was there, I was really focused on myself, or maybe, driving from ego.
Right.
And so I wanted to go the other route and do something that was giving back in some capacity. So I looked for some opportunities, found the chance to go teach in India for a couple months. So I went and did that in the north in India, and just like got smacked in the face with different culture, different language, different food. And what I realized was, growing up in North America, that wasn't the way to live. It's just a way to live.
Right.
And I was living in this village, and, it wasn't a very wealthy place. And the people were so giving. They were so generous. And for the most part, they were all really happy. So now I had this disconnect of these people weren't that wealthy, and they seemed pretty happy and fulfilled for the most part. And then I look back at, my friends in Toronto or my coworkers, and, big salaries, big bonuses, really unhappy and unfulfilled.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of knew I need to do my own thing, and it needs to be rooted in what I love in some capacity. So growing up, I was always writing all the time, reading and writing. And so took my business knowledge and took that writing skill and became a copywriter. So right. Was doing that online, traveling around, got to go through, Bali, Thailand, Australia, Europe. And eventually, filled my roster of clients, was doing decently well, pretty much paying for travel with, a little bit extra. And one of my clients was an agency in Kelowna, BC. And we talked about, hey, what would it look like if I came out there and joined in some capacity? And lo and behold, I found myself in Kelowna, which has been, that was 3 years ago, 3.5. And it's been such a blessing. I get to meet amazing people like you. Everyone in Kelowna has been so warm and welcoming, really. Yeah, it's a pretty magical place. And so once I got here, learned about the agency world a bit, and branding, photography, websites, and started to dip my toes into other things, started to consult, got into the tech world, joined a couple projects where we're trying to start companies. The world of startups and investing and raising money, that's all super interesting. Great learning lessons. And the undercurrent here throughout all of this was I was really interested in personal development.
Right.
So, I think it was 5 years ago, I went to my first Tony Robbins event and was just mind blown of just like people modifying the way that they live and see things in order to live the life that they loved. I wanted to know a lot more about that. So I started reading all the books I could, listening to all the podcasts. I went to probably 5 or 6 different Tony Robbins events, kind of went through the sequence of them. And what I noticed was whether I was consulting or I was working in the agency world with a client, my favorite thing to do was to actually interact with the clients and go through that. What I didn't realize at the time was coaching. And the more that I stripped away everything else and focused on that coaching, the happier I became. It gave me so much energy. It gave me so much. I would be done a session with a client, or I would do a bunch throughout the day. I would go home, just a big goofy smile on my face. So And I have to give a shout out to Mr. Dan Harrison. So at the time was my business partner, and he's a really good friend and definitely a mentor to me. And he showed me that I could productize my knowledge too. So I created a course. That was my first course, and went from having one of my worst financial months in December of, I think it was 2 years ago, to January was my most successful month of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was kind of an unlock for me. It's like, well, that's possible. And so now I've been on a mission to try and help other people do that. So in day to day, I would call myself a business coach. And my mission is to help 1 million people design a life and a mindset and a business that's all around purpose and fulfillment, doing something meaningful to you. And I believe if people are doing that, they're naturally going to give back in a social entrepreneurship capacity. And so I still do a little bit of consulting in the tech world. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I run Black Sheep Masterminds. And so these are in-person mastermind events that so far they've just happened in BC, but when COVID restrictions diminish in the future, they'll definitely be in other places, probably throughout the States and Canada. And those events are for entrepreneurs that are just forging their own path. They might bend or break the rules once in a while. They're really authentic. And more importantly, they do care about serving people and giving back in some capacity. And I would say that's kind of the long-winded story leading into what's going on today.
Well, there's a couple things I'd love to like kind of go a little bit more into. There's the fulfillment component. There's your building a program and going from like, oh my God, December sucks to what just happened, and that piece. And then to dive a little bit more into Black Sheeps, because I think that's an interesting side. So mind if we start at the fulfillment component where you were talking about when you were in India, you saw just this huge, like, I call it comparison or whatever, but like over in North America, you have these people that are working and, in stable, should be happy jobs with, at least stable from a financial standpoint, and really not fulfilled, really not happy, but just going through the paces. Yet you go into India in the northern area where people don't have a lot of money, but they have a lot of fulfillment and community and are just like giving more than you would think that they should be, or like more than it, maybe on the surface, it seems like they have.
Yeah, that was it was quite the wake up. And I have a specific example in India. One of my students, she invited me for dinner at her family home. And so I went there, and they wouldn't let me help at all. And they lived in this, it was kind of up on this mountain in this hut. And we had this great dinner, and the region that I was living in was mostly vegetarian, pretty strictly vegetarian. And they had chicken that they gave me. And so this was amazing. It was a great meal. And I went back and I told the principal, and I was saying, we had this, and that, and they had this amazing chicken, and their eyes were like saucers. They're like, oh, like, where did they get that chicken from? And I was like, oh, their father went to the market, I guess. And she told me that market is like an hour and a half away, and the cost of that chicken would be probably like 1 month of his salary of what he earns. And so here I am, this, like rich Westerner, and living in a hut in the mountain, and they're just like, please, like, take this. And like my mind was just blown. So that really, it kind of like shook something inside of me, not only on the, the giving side or the generosity side, but also just like how happy these people were to give that to me. They just seemed really rooted and really grounded. And so I looked at North America, and it was a lot of like take, right? And then I started to seek out some people that seemed to be happy, that seemed to be fulfilled. And what they did is, they always they made sure they were taken care of, but then they found ways to serve, and they found ways to give to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're serving, it comes from that place of like, it's almost built-in gratitude. If you're doing it right, there's a real grateful component to it. You being a Tony Robbins fan, I forget what program it was, but in one of his tapes or CDs from back in the day, he talks about this experience where he was starting up his own thing, and he always used to buy dinner for everybody. He had one client out, and he was trying to like, but no, I'm going to pay. And the guy just kind of sat him down, and he's like, Tony, look, this is my gift to you. Let me have this. I want to give this to you because I enjoy giving this. please do not take that away from me, and just kind of be aware of that going forward. For me, like hearing your story, and that is like, wow, it is a gift. Like, how many times do we try to do like, no, I've got it. No, here, where it's just like, no, like step back and just let them, if they're making that offer, there's a reason. And, yeah, they're giving something to you, but they might be getting some real, like, could be an opportunity that they're filling their cup that you're taking away from them. Right. And I find that just an interesting mindset shift to have, because I used to be one of those guys who was like, no, I'm going to be the last one to give, or I'll sneak in and pay for things, and realizing I enjoy that. Maybe obviously other people do too, because it fulfills them in some shape or form. And it's an interesting thing just to keep in mind when whatever it is, somebody's trying to give you something, and graciously accepting it and being honored by it, right?
Yeah, I love that story, Gene. And that whole concept of, they are getting something immense from giving you something, and to always try and take that away from them kind of defeats the point. And yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I got really uncomfortable getting gifts, right? Because I was a kid, and so I would get all these presents for Christmas, and I wasn't buying gifts for other people. I didn't have a job. Yeah. And then, when I got older and I could give other people gifts and I got to feel how that felt, I was like, oh, like the real magic is in giving to someone else. And I think it's an art to be able to receive when other people are excited to give. That's like, you get just as much value, I think.
Oh, 100%. Right. I think even more like in the moments when I was younger, when I'd be thinking clearly about what's my intention about putting out here, and realizing that what I put out, it was like, I wasn't getting a 1-for-1 back. Like whatever you put out there, it comes back tenfold, right? Yeah. Like, this isn't a Grant Cardone speech or anything, but like it truly does come back 10x, right? The universe has this incredible way of just compounding it. Now, it may take some time for it to loop back, but the more that you're putting out there in a consistent feedback, is the more it's going to be circling back into you. So you even have more to give. You give good, and you're going to get a lot of good, and you give bad, you're going to get a lot of bad. Like it will amplify whatever you put out there. And it's interesting just being aware of that, and knowing that we are here to give. We're really here to help. I think I agree with you. Like when you realize that everything that we do is here to serve the people around us or somebody else, is kind of that unlock as well, because we can get really trapped in that self-serving component. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's a reason that they say when you're on the airplane, put the mask on yourself first.
Yes.
It's so that you can survive, so that you can go help other people. But once you have it on, get out there and do what you can to help everybody else.
Yeah. You don't need 4 or 5 oxygen masks. Like one is good.
No need to hog them, right? So, yeah. But yeah, and then, wow, I already lost my own train of thought here. So we had the fulfillment side of it.
December to January.
Oh yeah, December to January. So like, you went, you worked with Dan, you said, and you made a product out of your knowledge. Well, like, so many people hear that and see these courses, and you don't have to go far on YouTube or even Facebook to find somebody that's like, hey, come check out my course. This has allowed me to drive these Ferraris that are parked in my garage. And just the thought of that sometimes is so hard for people. Like, care to share a little bit about what that journey was like to like overcome that, inertia, to be able to say, okay, let's get this to a point that I'm happy enough to put it out there.
So it's interesting because it really follows the current of this conversation where we started. We were both kind of working on our offers at the same time, and we kept coming back to like, who is the person that we want to like transform their life, right? Who's that person that I can visualize that, after we work together, they get to experience all these positive things. So I think it was, amazing that we started from a place of service. And once we got really clear on who that person was, I could kind of match up. I'm like, okay, well, what's the skill set that I already have that they would be really excited to gain access to? So my first program coming from a marketing background, having this experience in the agency world and copywriting, I saw all these business owners and they were going to agencies and they didn't really know what the agency was doing, or they were paying these really high retainers every month and just not getting a lot of value back. So I thought, well, I know tons of small business owners, medium-sized business owners. Why don't I just share a bunch of knowledge with them and empower them with the knowledge, right? So that's what I kept thinking about, of what can I give them that just pays them dividends moving forward and they're not reliant on me. And so if I could teach them the basics of copywriting, the basics of SEO, the basics of marketing on social media, and give them those tools, they can do it themselves, or they can train one of their employees to do it. Or if they do go to an agency, now they have the knowledge and they can get fair value for their services. So I think that's a fantastic place for anyone to start if they want to productize themselves or bring a product through their business as far as knowledge. Is start with that person. That's my baseline for everything. That's how I market things. That's how I sell things. It's about seeing that person in front of you or visualizing that person in front of you, and making it crystal clear on where they are and where you want to take them.
Right. So it really starts at like, who you serve, like who can you benefit, like who does your knowledge benefit the most, and how can you, that old saying, like teach them how to fish. What you're doing, especially with that product, is like, I've been in agency land. I know how many clients are like, they come into it, don't even know what they're in for. And sometimes there's some unscrupulous actors that are out in those markets that do take advantage of that lack of knowledge on their behalf. Mm-hmm. And they pay for it in quite heavily sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you're out there being like, here, I can give you the basics so you understand, you can start to do it for yourself. And then you have a better understanding when you actually hire that out, going, I know now who I'm trying to attract. And I know, at a high level, what those systems are. Obviously, they're not going to be the experts, but they're able to understand the framework that's going to help drive their business, versus be like hiring a marketing agency going, I don't know, we put money into this black box and then profit comes out, right? That's how it works.
Hopefully.
Right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And what I would add to that too is, I think I was already on this journey of trying to connect with my purpose, right? Like, why am I here? What do I value? What do I want to do? And so I knew that creativity was important to me. And I also knew it was important for me to help entrepreneurs or business owners. But what I found was, in all the conversations I was having outside of work, I was telling the story that we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, which is that transition I made from being unfulfilled, unhappy, unhealthy, to becoming an entrepreneur and doing something that was meaningful to me and experiencing some freedom. And in my story, I kind of fast forwarded through it, but there was a lot of like stubbing my toe, a lot of tripping and falling down and learning lessons hard. And so that's kind of how I came up with my next program. And this is the one that I run today. And that's called Zero to Profit, which is essentially the product I wish Alexander had 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. I built the thing that I wish I had, which is, how do I go from being an employee to being a purpose-driven, profitable entrepreneur in 10 weeks?
Well, that's a great service to have. And I imagine there's so many people that want to get into that right now. Even over the last 5 years, decade, the concept of being an entrepreneur has like skyrocketed. There's a lot of people that look at it going, oh, this is the sexy thing. I can't wait to be more part of this. And then they get into it and they start taking punches to the face, and they find out just how unsexy it really is really fast, right? You talk about stubbing your toes along the way. Like, that's, I've got this half-baked article that I wrote like a year ago about taking punches to the face. Is like, if you cannot take a punch to the face, metaphorical punch to the face in business, like, entrepreneurship's not for you, and that's okay. But like, going into it going, it isn't like, I start my own business, I think I know what I want to do, ... profit. Be like, it's like the ... is like, well, actually, that's a 3 to 5 year commitment to start off with if you want to really get into it. And there is a lot of stubbing your toe on the coffee table, to use your metaphor, and a lot of swearing about it. why doesn't someone just move this coffee table? You move it and then you stub your toe on it again and again and again and again. And it's just that process of constantly being able to be like, all right, what am I learning from this next piece? And going, oh, really understanding that fulfillment and having that, I think knowing what you want or how you want to serve is always a helpful place. I was about to say purpose, but sometimes you're still working through your own why, but you're like, this is, I help people doing this. Why? Because I want to help me 5 years ago, and me 5 years ago was still out there waiting to get this service.
Yes. Yeah. And I like what you said too, of like, connecting with purpose. It seems like this big, monumental thing, right? And it's kind of scary to say like, this is my purpose. And so the coach that I'm working with right now, Jim Fortin, he hammers into us over and over again that you're allowed to change your purpose. You're allowed to change your mission, because next week you're going to be a different person and you might have new experiences, and hey, life changes. But if you can connect with something today that feels good, that makes you feel good, it makes other people feel good, that's a great place to start.
Oh yeah, it's like be where your feet are right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think too many people are either playing in the past or playing in the future and forgetting about like, actually, to get to that future version of you, you have to take a step today. And today's you feels like, well, this is the direction I want to go. So take that right direction, right? It's never written in stone. And I think I agree with you. I think so many people do think, oh, well, if I figure out my purpose, this unlocks the door forever. Be like, no, that just unlocks the door for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because you might open that door and get hit in the face with something that you were not expecting. And it totally changes your perspective, right? Like it could be your metaphorical trip to India is like, what are you about to learn tomorrow? And are you open to learning that tomorrow that could change everything for you? And being, okay, how do I integrate all this? How do I stay curious? How do I now move forward through all of this? Be like, wow, it's going to be it's going to be overwhelming. That's part of it. That's just part of the agreement going into that, and part of that growth component, right? So I think it's fun, but you kind of have to be like ready for it. And I don't think you're ever truly ready. You just have to be, all right, I'm willing to take the step. And I know what I don't know. I know there's going to be some bumps, but there's also going to be some really great opportunities to celebrate as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're highlighting the points about growth and about development, because for me, and I think a certain subsector of the population, depending on what your personality type is, some people follow Enneagram or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
For me, I really, really value growth, and personal development is just super interesting to me. If I'm reading or listening to something, it's usually about that. And I think that entrepreneurship is it's like a personal growth accelerator, right? You strap yourself to a rocket. And as your business is growing and going through the ups and downs, so are you. Yeah. And that's my absolute favorite part about it.
Oh, 100%. I always joke that, well, we're on a rocket and we're going to be building it as we go. We know that it's taken off, and it's up to us to make sure that it doesn't crash horribly. And so, like using that metaphor more than once. And most of my career prior to doing more of this was in the tech world. So I've definitely seen some rocket ships start to go off the pad. I've also been on some that have exploded spectacularly, and you can look back on those now and go, wow, what a journey, what a story. At the time, it sucks to be part of the big fireball, but realize 6 months, a year from that point, you're going to look back and go, wow, that's changed everything about how I approach things.
Yeah, I'm a big believer there's a book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yep, I've been recommended that book more than once.
Yes, it changed my life for sure. And if someone wants the cold notes, that fireball of a rocket burning up and exploding was actually the perfect gift that you needed on your journey. And when you look back and reflect on it, you're so grateful for it. You're like, oh my God, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be here, blah, 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 doing coaching or whatever.
Oh, exactly. Right. It's I think as Robbins as well talks about being grateful or finding ways to thank the bad things, or give them credit for all the good. Be like, if you're going to give it something that's happened in your life all the credit for all the badness that it brought, be like, you also have to realize because of that, it opened up any of the good that you potentially have as well, and thanking it for that, because without it, you wouldn't be that person. Now, don't tell me that there's some horrible traumas and things that need to have appropriate support around, but it has, you can find ways to take the good benefits from it that are going to allow you to come out and serve and allow you to be, just better, period.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you get to make a choice, right? Like we can all look back, and I think that's becoming really evident to me is every person that I meet, something very traumatic has happened to them somewhere along the way in childhood or in, when they're a young adult. And when you look back, you get to decide. We have the power of perception. Like, was that a good or a bad thing? And if you think, calling something a bad thing, a negative thing serves you, fantastic. And if you get to a point where you're like, well, you know what? Like, what if I put a little positive spin on that? What would my life feel like and mean if that negative traumatic experience actually helped and guided me? I think, I'm still learning, but that's the way that I'm committed to living my life.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Like it is tough in that moment, but to know that there will be some point that you can choose that to be your identity, or you can choose it to be just part of your story.
Yes.
Yeah. So with your Zero to Profit, you have another cohort of this starting up in November here, which is wildly a day away.
Yes. Yeah. It'll be. I think we were talking earlier. It'll be the 23rd that we launch it, and I'm really excited. We're going to bring on a new cohort, and this version is going to be kind of the version on steroids, and going to bring in some mentors and guest speakers for some master classes. Going to integrate masterminding into the program. So what I'm seeing here is, because I'm doing some one-on-one coaching with people that have taken the program before. So they went through the 10 weeks, they started a business, they're successful, and now they were looking for continued support. So, okay, perfect. I need to provide a solution. So this is going to go from zero to profit in 10 weeks. And then after the 10 weeks, continue to get support, continue to tweak, and to set yourself up for success and for scale.
Nice. I think that's a great way of having that conditioning on the back end of these, right? So many of these programs, you go into, you get like all this information dumped into you, and then bam, you go right back to your regular environment. And how it's really hard to keep that going if you don't have that help and that support to kind of keep it going at that level once you're kind of done that emotional like rush of the initial experience.
I agree. And I always say that I'm just like a couple pages ahead of my clients. I'm experiencing things, and then I'm bringing it to them. And so right now I'm part of a group coaching program myself. I'm a member in it. I'm part of a mastermind that happens with a bunch of different entrepreneurs. And I am seeing the incredible value for myself. And it's like, I need to give this to the people that I'm working with, which is such a cool experience. I just get to be the test subject. I just throw myself out there, read books, podcasts, go to events, hire coaches, see what sticks for me, and then pass it along to my clients.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's the gift that you get to bring is your interpretation to it, right? Like as coaches, we all really, at the end of the day, like what I've realized in the last few weeks is that we're all trying to sell, we are selling seeds of hope, right? Mm-hmm. How is anybody else supposed to get like motivated and out of this like zone of like either like a really gray area to being like, I want to be this, be like, you got to hope for that. And if you don't have any hope, are you actually going to get like emotionally charged and motivated to move through that? Are you going to be charged enough on those days the motivation is not showing up to have the discipline to still get through it, because where deep in your heart where that's going to go. I believe without hope, no one shows up like that.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. Actually, this necklace that I'm wearing here, this is a mustard seed in here, and there's a couple different quotes or variations of it, but it's essentially if you have, and they use the word faith, but hope, faith, pretty similar. If you have faith, even the size of a mustard seed, that can grow to move mountains. And I think that's what you and I are just trying to do, just trying to plant some seeds and then show people, not do it for them, but show them that they can grow that themselves.
Yeah, and it's like one of the stories / metaphors is like that I use is what grows that seed? Is it the farmer or the environment?
Mm.
And it's, the shortcut to that story is it's the farmer cultivates the environment.
Yeah.
The seed already knows how to grow. It just needs to have the right environment to thrive. So it's up to you to cultivate that environment, both, and that work really starts on the inside. And as you start putting it out there and looking for ways to make that environment a thrivable environment, you see all these different things start to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree. Environment is something that I'm constantly trying to tweak for myself too. I love that you bring that up, because like where you wake up, what you do, the first couple hours of the day, where you spend your time doing your work, they have an immense impact on the results that you might drive.
Oh, yes. I keep saying 100% here. I just caught myself, but like it is, I just totally agree with that, right? That it's like, for myself, I used to wake up and be like, right when I'd have like the last minute that I'd have to wake up. And then you're just like, get out of bed and you're like stressed immediately going into your day and you're just carrying that with you.
Mm.
And now where I shift myself is like, I'll wake up at like 5 o'clock sometimes. And it's like, I get to work out, I get to like read and just kind of like start my day. And those days are like usually some of my best, like by far, because when I hit the ground, by the time it's time for me to start giving to somebody else, like I've already primed, I'm ready to go, be it even if I'm just sitting and just like watching a show for myself or reading or doing an exercise. Like lately I've started a Friday morning hike with some friends. Like we did it this morning. Like we met at 5:50 and it was still dark by the time we came off Knox. Like, but it was just such a good way to start the day. And it's, it really is like how you start the day is you're cultivating that environment we were just talking about. You want one that's soaked in stress. And, we could get into how prolonged stress can do horrible things to your body. And from that energetic standpoint, like we are beings of energy and that stuff pours out of us and people and everything around us is affected by it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I almost said 100% too. But yeah, I think a lot of the work that I do, and maybe you'd say the same thing, is a lot of the technical aspects that I share with clients of systems. They're kind of second to putting that person in the position to be the best version of themselves in regards to their mindset, to their energy, to their health. I think that's, if you can do that, you can get yourself aligned there, you can do anything.
Yeah, and that's the game, that alignment and that harmony around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love where this is going because I was hoping that we get to talking about what the definition of black sheep too. I think we still got time. If we still got like 20 minutes, if I'm sure we can easily eat that up if you're still down.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
So black sheep. When we met, when you started telling your story about feeling like the black sheep of the family, I kind of snickered. I'm like, oh, Justina is right. There's some really good correlation here. So tell us, the rest of the world, what a black sheep, in your view, what the black sheep means and how that's shown up and like really affected you and how you present things. And then we can get into your black sheep mastermind group because we've mentioned masterminds a couple times now.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, growing up, going through the motions of life, being in university, interacting with people in sports, choosing media to consume, whatever it was, I found that I always just had a little bit of a different spin. I could relate to other people, but I always tended to find myself in this area by myself, or maybe with one or two other people, and we just liked to do things a little differently. And so the way that we kind of connected with the name Black Sheep is, we got a bunch of friends together, a bunch of entrepreneurs, and said, hey, let's just go rent a cabin, a chalet up at Big White, and let's brainstorm, let's mastermind, let's help each other, let's have some fun and see what happens. And so it was an amazing weekend. And as we were reflecting, like, wow, we're all so similar. Yeah, like we all value freedom, and we all value growth and kicking ass. We want to be super successful. And we want to take that success and we want to create positive impact with it. And so then we're looking around the room, and it became pretty clear. It's like, yeah, we're we're committed to being successful, and we definitely know the rules. But once in a while, we're really okay with bending them in a certain area. And we love getting connected to our body, kind of living in line, being energetic beings, right? I think we're all, have some sort of aspect of spirituality. Some people call it different things, but, we were up there meditating and doing Wim Hof breathing, and we're all open to different states of consciousness, right? So one area of my life that I do a little bit of consulting in is in the realm of psychedelics and how that can help with mental health. And that seemed to be an undercurrent that we were all sharing. And so all these things kind of started stacking up, and we went away, and it's like, we were all kind of black sheep. And just kind of been throwing around a lot of different definitions, but it reminds me a lot of the island of the misfit toys, right? And they didn't really, fit in with the normal toys. And you put them all together, and they're having a blast. They're partying. They're having a good time, and they're really okay with being their authentic self, right?
Yeah.
They've worked through life, and they've found the courage to say, like, you know what, like, I like to have pink hair, or like, you know what, like, I am going to start a business and give 50% back to a charity, even though people say that will never work. And that's kind of what I'm seeing is like the spirit of a black sheep so far. And I think that's just like a really cool way to live, right? Because I'm observing these people, and they're doing their own thing. As I said, they might bend or break the rule once in a while, but they're really caring people. They're really giving back. They really hold space. And it's actually one of the benefits that I didn't realize what happened from these masterminds. They've been really healing, because we get so deep and so intimate and just holding space for each other. And most entrepreneurs will know, if there's a problem in your business, there's probably a route that leads to the self. And I think that, the last point that I'll make there is a black sheep is like a really caring person, right? And so far we've been able to build a pretty cool, tight-knit community, and excited to see how we could scale that out.
That's very awesome. The one thing that you mentioned in there about a black sheep is, because I identify as a black sheep, and that's been part of my story as well for a very long time. And it was really cool to hear you say it. But the one thing you said in there is about how when people say it can't be done, you did the reference of like giving 50% back. The black sheeps that I know, and I can speak for myself, when somebody says it can't be done, I'm like, just fucking watch.
Yeah.
And like, if that isn't a call to action, to be like, I don't think you can do it, or prove it, be like, okay, let's go. I can't wait for you to eat that humble pie. That there is a competitive nature within it that just like comes out, and it's not from a bad place. At least I don't feel it, and the people that I would see around my life that would identify as that black sheep, it's a driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a healthy way, right? You can either be in competition with somebody or in comparison with them. And if the comparison is like a really dark and dirty place of like, I'm right, they're wrong, they're better, I'm not, whatever. But competition is like, what are you going to teach me? How are you going to push me? Be like, I can't wait to push you. Be like, I hope you keep going at that speed, because I'm coming for you. Right. Yeah. And that can be fun. Right. And realizing that your competition can be like good friends.
Yeah.
And changing it that way. But like I say, I think like black sheep are driven by somebody going, you can't do that. And be like, okay.
I love that you highlighted that fact, because it's such a highly competitive group, and it's cool. They're not competing with each other to beat each other. They're competing almost with themselves and with the market. Mm-hmm. Because one of my favorite phrases is collaboration over competition.
Yeah.
But you get a bunch of really competitive people together that are collaborating with each other, some magic happens.
And almost we need a new word for that, right? Some sort of however you would combine collaborative and competition into, collision. No, that sounds horrible. Well, this is why it's live. We get to put in even the rough cuts. I was sharing with somebody recently. Why do you do these live? A, because I'm lazy and I don't want to do the editing. But on the flip side, be like, everyone should see the real conversation when we stutter a little bit. But back to that. I think that's I think it's powerful to be able to do that and understand that there are a lot of black sheep out there, and they are parts of groups, but they don't really have like any one set niche until you start meeting more of your own kind. You're like, oh, where are you guys hanging out? Be like, oh, we don't know. I guess we should just hang out together then.
Yes. Yeah. It really feels like, I mean, the best word is family, right? Because there's a group of people that they have the same frame of reference as you, right?
Yeah.
They've gone through life seeing, you know, quote unquote, the normal way of doing things, or let's say the average way of doing things. And not to say that's bad. Some people, they perfectly fit into that and they love that. But these people, they had this little pit in their stomach of, this doesn't really connect with me. I don't really feel quite right here. And no one else is resonating that back to me. And all of a sudden you find a group of friends just like, yeah, we like all the stuff that you do. It's like, awesome. I love that.
It's almost reassuring to know that you're not alone though, right?
Yeah.
To be like, there are other freaks out there like me and I freaking love it.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that, like, the whole essence of Black Sheep Mastermind is like being really proud of your freak flag and just like flying it high and surrounding yourself with other people that are doing the same. And, hopefully some people notice our flags and support our businesses so we can go and serve and give back.
Yeah. Will you have any more? Are you going to be doing any of these masterminds digitally, or do you have any coming up in the new year, or that you're hoping to run again?
The world of COVID has made it interesting. So we're kind of watching here with, the quote unquote, second wave and, different regulations that are happening. The loose plan is, so we're having I would call it like a Black Sheep alumni event for New Year's. So if you've already been to an event, you could go to that one. As far as new people getting involved, we'll have one in the, obviously dependent on what happens with restrictions, but in the first quarter, I'd love to get up to Big White here in Kelowna, get some skis and snowboards and some masterminding going on. And the last one we did was at Whistler, and that was an absolute blast. We had a really cool crew from Vancouver come up. Yeah. So maybe in the first quarter, getting one going in Kelowna, nice. One near Vancouver. And once the world starts to open up a little bit and maybe thaw out after winter, we'll look at maybe getting into Calgary. And I have so many friends down the West Coast in the States that, in Seattle or San Francisco. And, it's an interesting world that we live in. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I'm pretty optimistic. I think we're going to find some stability in 2021. Yeah. And, the goal would be just to go connect with some more Black Sheep and empower them.
I agree. The only way we can do this is by planting those own seeds of hope that things. I like the way you said thaw out, and I think that just applies really well to everything that's going on right now. Is that it will at some point it will thaw. This is a moment. It may feel like a big moment, but it will come to an end, and there will be something else that comes in and replaces it, which will get the people that are excited about the change and those farming those opportunities back in there and going.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a big fan of thinking about the world in seasons, or my business in seasons. Something Tony Robbins references a lot, but I think he got it from Jim Rohn. Yeah. And every winter is followed by spring. It's just nature. It just happens. Or look at the stock market, right? It crashes, it goes back up. It crashes, it goes back up. And over time, it's an increasing trend. And so we have some turbulence right now, some tensions, some collective healing that we're doing. And on the other side of that, there's going to be a version of spring, and there's going to be a summer too, right? And I think we really have to remember these times to appropriately enjoy the spring and the summer and plan for the next winter too.
Oh yeah, it's always plan. Actually on my wall here, it's not so much about planning, but just being prepared, right? Because you just never know. And if you're prepared and you're thinking in that way, you'll be ready for it, and being able to hold that space for what's that worst case scenario. Now, nobody could probably predicted COVID or planned for COVID, but being like, what could happen if everything shut down? That's going to be part of somebody's mission now going into the future. It's like, what happens if everything shuts down again? We're going to pivot and we're going to find a way through it. That's the hopefully for anybody that's listening right now, is like, find those ways through it, because they're there and there is opportunity out there. And I've called this the great pause. And I think a lot of people needed a pause. and this way to go, what do I really want to do? Do I like what I'm doing? All right, well, how can I change that now? Because I have to. In some instances, there are people that are in those situations that they have to, and it's a big challenge.
It's going to be, one of those situations where, at the time, a lot of people lost their jobs, right, because of COVID, and you have a grieving period of like, why did this happen to me? Why is this happening to the world? And say that person starts an online business and they're a multimillionaire and they're just working from anywhere in the world and supporting their family, and they're like, thank God I lost that job.
Oh yeah, it takes it right back to like our first talking point about, giving thanks to the shitty things at that time, is like that shitty experience now gave you this good one, right? Like that's it opened the door, because what is the obstacle is the way, from Marcus Aurelius. So like that's what it is. These obstacles are just showing you the way and calling you out to step through them.
Yeah, and all we can do is follow them along and enjoy where we are right now, because all we have is today. I always say that I could leave this this recording, go to the grocery store, get in a car accident. That's it. So that could happen to any of us at any time, and so I should just be here, fully present, and find the joy, find the positivity. Yes, there'll be difficulty and there'll be friction points. There's always that undercurrent or that stitching of joy that you can find.
Oh yeah, it's there. You just have to be open to it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for it. Well, man, we're at this time, Mark. I want to be very conscious of your time. So, this has been an awesome conversation. I don't think it's going to be our last conversation by a long shot, my friend. So, is there any shout outs you want to give? Just a reminder that Alexander's next program starting on November 23rd, and to reach out. I put it in the comments down below. I'm getting used to saying that, but the comments down below, reach out to him on Instagram. Anything else you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, honestly, that's it. And just want to take a moment to, highlight yourself. I think you're, just doing this podcast here, doing it live. You're doing the thing that a lot of people say they're going to do. Like, oh, I'd love to have a podcast. And I'm one of them, by the way. So I'm sitting over here being inspired, taking notes, being pushed to action. But I just wanted to celebrate you and thank you for having me on. Like you said, it's not going to be the last conversation that we have, but if someone's listening to this and they're watching it and, seeing what Gene's put together, and, just make, like, my favorite phrase is, what would this look like if it was easy? Right. And if you want to start a podcast or start a business or start taking pictures as a photographer, whatever it is, start somewhere and just put something on the map, and you don't know what that seed will grow into until you do that.
No, and that's, what I'm looking forward to is like this a year from now, and looking back at it from the very first one where I reached out my friend Tom in New Zealand, where I'm like, hey, you want to do a live cast? He's like, yeah, sure. When? 10 minutes. He's like, okay. And that's how this thing started. It went from us just doing a Zoom call while we're trying to like fumble through how to make it work live streaming, to where it is today. And like every little bit is an opportunity just to make it a little bit better. And that's my goal with this, is make it just a little bit better than it was. And I would not have been able to do that if I didn't just say, fuck it, and start. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. You don't have to take big steps. You just have to take the next right step.
Yes. Yeah, I fully agree. And I commend you for taking the step, and I'm grateful for it. I'm enjoying the step.
Well, thank you, my brother. Like, this has been a lot of fun. Well, I'm going to let you go. So thank you so much for this time. You have yourself a great weekend, and hopefully enjoy Halloween.
You as well, sir. And I look forward to catching up soon again.
Perfect. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.